Hello everyone, welcome back to our geometry class. Today we are going to continue our conversation about 3D objects, and we are going to continue focusing on the volume, the topic of volume. And this time we are going to look at the different kind of objects. So let's quickly check an example here. In the previous class, you probably remember we see all different kind of objects. Sometimes it's a triangular prism, sometimes it's a rectangular prism, cylinder, cone, etc. And in reality, sometimes we do not just look at or the construction we see or any example we can think of is not always focused on solely one kind of object. Most cases, we actually need to combine different kind of objects to make a new kind of object. And when we combine different kind of parts together, we call this kind of object is composite objects. So for example, if you see this picture here, if you see the picture here is, you cannot just say, oh, this is a cube or this is a rectangular prism, or even it apparently is not look like a pyramid. So apparently it's actually combined the different pieces together. If you really look at top part, so if you really look at the top part, you'll probably look at a triangular prism, right? Because this side is a triangle, even the back side we cannot see. This is going to be a triangle, so this top part is a triangular prism, and the bottom part is going to be a rectangular prism. So that's actually, we use the two pieces together to combine them. So in the previous lesson, we mentioned we can have a different formulas to find the volume. And today's lesson, we are going to work on this kind of thing. Then question is, how do we find the volume for this kind of objects? What are the things we need to do? What are the considerations we need to put into the calculation? And also, as you can see, we have a calculator on the side to help us to finish the calculation part. Okay, so let's check the first example here. So first example, we have a project here. As you can see, let's just before we check the measurements, let's quickly check what are the parts of this object. So if you really look at the bottom part, we see this is actually look at the rectangular prism, right? So the bottom part is like a box. However, the top part is a little bit different from the one example we just saw. This example, every single point shrink to the one top point here. So we know clearly the top part is a pyramid. So we have a pyramid on the top, and we have rectangular prism on the bottom, right? So that's actually two parts of this. So clearly, if we want to find the volume, we definitely need two parts. First, we need to find the general prism, which apply to this situation, rectangular prism, and the other one is a pyramid. Before we look at the question here, before we start the calculation, one thing I want to remind you about the formula we use. So as I mentioned in the previous class, the formulas here, the capital B part, is not really as simple as B stands for base. B stands for the area of the base. So the first question is we need to figure out what is the area of what is a base, what kind of shape we're dealing with, and then we find area to figure out this. So to show the calculation more clearly, I'm going to write down the volume for the two part, and later we can just add them together to find out the total volume. So that way you can see exactly what I'm going to do to figure out the volumes. Okay, so the top part I'm going to, the first part I'm going to find the rectangular prism. So I'm going to just write down the bottom. We know this is a rectangular prism, and in the previous lesson, even this is a base area, but we know this is actually this case is a square because it's a 15 inches, 15 inches. So it's length times width times height. So it's going to be 15 times 15 times 10. And all the units are the same. There's no conversion needed. So this is going to be this. So let's just quickly So the bottom part, which we already know, 2 to 50. And now let's check the top part. The top part, as we mentioned, it is going to be the pyramid. So it is 1/3, again, base area times height. But one thing some student might say, base area, you mean the bottom of this square here? Yes, correct. This is actually, if you check top part, I'm going to draw the edge of this. This is going to be the base of the pyramid. And clearly, some student might say, what is a measurement? Do not forget the box, even just, straight up here, this is going to be 15. This is going to be 15. So every measurement is already know here. And we know this is going to be 1/3. Base area, we know it's a square. So 15 times 15. And then the height. Do not forget, this height is the height of the pyramid. It's the distance from the top point to the vertical distance from the top point to the base, which is indicated here, 8 inches. So now we just need to plug in everything in the calculator, and there's no need to break down, because as long as you type everything there, you should be able to get the right answer. Make sure you type every number correctly. So it's 15 times 8, and then this is 600. Do not forget, we find the two parts volume. Finally, we need to add these two volume together in order to find out the answer. So since we already have 2 to 600, so 2250, you can definitely do the mental math. And also the unit, as you can see, this is inches. Do not forget, you're actually talking about the volume, so it's going to be inches cubed. Okay? Because you multiply the measurement 3 times. So that's the first question. Now let's check the next question here. And it's always a good idea. You can pause the video and also check the shape we are looking at and figure out what are the two shapes we actually have. So as you can see, this is actually very familiar, especially during summer. Everybody loves ice cream. So we always want to put some like a scoop on top of the cone. So that's actually very similar to the shape we're working at, right? We have during the ice cream season. And for this one, as you can see, the bottom part is a cone. And the top part, some student might wonder, what is this? It's kind of sphere, but it's not. So remember, it is related to sphere, but it's actually half of the sphere, so we call this hemisphere, meaning this is half of this sphere. So apparently we need to look at the sphere formula and also the cone formula, which is here. So let's check the top part, which is, I'm going to write down the top, but clearly we know this is a hemisphere, which means I'm going to use this one, but it's going to be half. So I'm going to use, since it's going to be half of square sphere, so I'm going to times a half to remind me this is going to be hemisphere. And then I'm going to replace the formula this, which is 4/3 pi. R is the radius of the circle. In this case, it's actually 10 to the third power. Okay, so, since I'm going to do a lot of calculation for the pi, so I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to write a long number here since I need to round it. I prefer to write down the formula first for the whole expression, and later I just type whatever I need to type, and I can just find the answer. Of course, if you like to do that, make sure your number is rounded more than the final answer so you can have the answer. So the bottom part is cone, which is 1/3 pi times, again, the radius, which is 10 here, 10 square times the height is already indicated here, the height for the cone, which is 15. So as you can see, the whole total volume should be adding the top to the bottom, right? So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to just type everything together to help me to find out the answer. Of course, if you like to break down, that's fine. But please make sure keep more digits than the final answer in order to avoid possible mistakes. So let's check the top part. 1 divided by 2, I put the parentheses, I just, continue use this. Then pi then 10 cube. Okay. Make sure you move the arrow here so it's not always on the top. That's a top part. So if you want to break down to write down this answer, that's fine, but do not just write down a 0.3 or 0.39 or 0.39. Make sure you add in more digits. Sometimes it's always a good idea write down 3951, just a little bit more digits than the final answer required. That will avoid mistake here. So since it's adding, so I'm gonna keep this answer. I just write down the answer, second part, which is 1/3 times pi here times 10 square and then times 15. Let's double check the answer part, which is the top one, and then I add 1/3 pi times 10 square times 15 and then enter. So this is actually our final answer. Now I'm going to just check, how do I round it? The question asking us to round it to the nearest hundredth, which means 2 digits after the decimal, 19. And when you keep it, we always need to check the third number because we need to keep 2. Third number is 1. It's not going to be rounded because it's less than 5. So the final answer is going to be 3665.19. Let's write down. Again, this is a centimeter, so there's going to be centimeter cube, but do not forget this is a volume. Okay, so as you can see the calculation here, we show the expression for each part and we add them together to find out the final answer. So this is how do we do this one. Again, if you prefer to break down, please always remember to keep more digits so you won't make mistake when you round it to the final answer. Now let's work on the last practice here. This one a little bit different from the one we had before. This one says a shape of cylinder is drilled through the cube. So the key here is drill through. That means we take out. We actually make sure the middle part of this cube is actually hollow, like the other two questions you see. What the volume of the remaining solid. Keyword remaining solid. So for the ones, if you cannot really imagine that, when you drill through, that means this part is already empty. So I choose another two picture like you see. So the middle part is actually empty. And the question asking us, then what is the rest part? What is the volume for the rest part? So you can definitely pause the video, think about what kind of calculation you need to do now in order to find out the answer. So same question here, I'm going to leave some space for us to do the calculation. Some of you probably already figure out. Since I need to find the remaining, clearly this one is cut out, right? The middle part is cut out. So meaning I'm going to subtract whatever we had before. So outside part, the whole piece is actually cube. So the one is actually cube is actually similar to the rectangular prism, is length times width times height. The only special part, all three measurements is actually same. So I'm going to find the cube first, which is 6 times 6 times 6 is going to be 6 to the third power. So we can just write down 6 to the third power, which is 216. And then the middle part is a cylinder. Is taking out. So all we need to do here is we figure out what is a cylinder volume, which is pi r square h. Pi r square, r is the radius, but as you can see, the whole distance here is 5, meaning the diameter is 5. So the radius should be half of 5 square. And should times h. So some students might say, I don't see the h here, but do not forget, the cylinder actually stay in the middle of the cube, so exactly they have same height here. So I just draw this, help you to see. So this one is actually exactly same x, so this is gonna be, the height is gonna be 6. And we know the remaining solid, since I take out the cylinder from that, so I'm going to use a V cube, subtract the cylinder, right? Because this is how we figure out the question here because it's cut out. So now I'm going to just type everything here to figure out the answer. I just like not to break down before I come to the final answer in case I forgot to write down more digits, things like that. So I'm going to write everything together. So it's going to be pi times, do not forget, this is going to be divided by 2, and this is a square, then times 6. Let's double check everything to make sure it is accurate. 216 is the volume for the cube, and it is a pi r square times h. This is cylinder, enter. So the final answer, as you can see, this is our final answer here. And this says rounded to the nearest tens. So I'm going to look at this answer here, nearest tens, 1 digit after decimal, which is number 1 here, and the next number, which is 9, greater than 5, so I'm going to round it up. So the answer is going to be 98.2. Again, this is inches, so it's going to be inches cubed. Okay, so that's all the answers for these questions. The good idea is, if you think one of the questions is a little bit confusing, definitely just double check these, solutions here, or even just do some practice on your own. Compare my answers again. And I hope this video is helpful. Thank you so much for checking this video with me. Take care, everyone.